자, 이제 처음에 말씀드린 대로 두 분의 토론이 발표가 끝났기 때문에 간단하게 Q&A 하는 시간을 가지고 그리고 두 번째 세션을 진행하도록 하겠습니다. Please have a seat in front desk, Mr. Sedler and Mr. Gagia. Q&A 시간이 대략 지금 20분 정도로 예정하고 있는데요. 여기 앞에 헤드마이크가 준비되어 있습니다. 그래서 죄송합니다. 제가 그러면 먼저 하나 질문을 좀 드리겠습니다. 우리나라에서는 아직 과학기술 기반의 사회적 기업이 되게 생소하고 또 아직 많은 분들이 잘 모르고 계신데요. 이 과학기술 소셜벤처가 제대로 육성되기 위해서는 어떤 시스템과 장치가 필요한지 좀 궁금합니다. 이 질문은 조엘한테 여쭤보겠습니다.
Hello? Okay. That's a great question. I'm an engineer by training, so my answer will be biased. I think what is needed to have more social entrepreneurs that use technology is to encourage the youth, the younger the better, even from 5 years old. Encourage the youth of the country to use technology for social impact, for improving people's lives. So I think there needs to be a high investment in the country into talent that is passionate about technology but maybe unsure about where to apply. I think that is the role of the education, of the educator, to guide young students to apply what they learn in school to social problems. And I'll share one story. When I was an undergraduate, I was 19 years old, 20 years old. I had a chance to travel to Mexico to work on wheelchairs. And that's where I discovered that when I could apply very basic engineering knowledge that I was learning in an undergraduate education to significantly help somebody's life by fixing a part of their wheelchair. And that was the beginning for me to explore things like medical devices and prosthetics. So I think it never is too early, and the students must have encouraging experiences like this where they can see that their input is valuable no matter how small.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
What's your strategy for scaling? Each of you has this fantastic idea that can make major impact in the world. How do you get it out as fast as you can?
Sure, for the Remotion project or the Jaipurni, I didn't go into a lot of details into our business model and our plan for scaling, but this is our number one concern and the most challenging problem that we face, which I think is ironic because it is not the technology that is limiting our impact, it is the business model. So in our case, we take a very collaborative approach to understanding the organizations who work in prosthetics in the country. We start with India, and we have a business model of selling our products directly to NGOs, the NGO network that supports prosthetics. And so we will start with getting the cost of the components as low as possible. This doesn't solve all of the problems, but there's no reason for a prosthetic to cost $1,000. Or, as it is often in Korea, it can be $20,000, $30,000. This is not necessary. And so as an engineer, I can get the cost down. Later on, for the next points of scale, we will need to understand the distribution networks in each of the countries that we go into. And in a nutshell, our business model involves understanding the NGO networks in each country and selling directly to them.
Well, in our case, it's totally different. It's upside down. I think the market is there because the need is there. Just in India, we have got 500,000 villages. So there is no need of demand for it. But the problem in India is that people who want it cannot afford it. And people who can afford it do not need it, and that's why they don't want it. So the question is, how do we take this technology the last mile? And so this is where I think the innovation comes in. What we are now working on is a model called BOOT. It is build, own, operate, and transfer. And we make it an entrepreneurial model. So what we do is we go to the villages, we organize them, we put up the technology and the plant at our cost, and we supply them the gas, which is supplied to them at 50% of the cost which they are paying to buy the LPG cylinder. We are creating employment. They are getting organic fertilizer because of which they are automatically getting into organic farming. And series of such measures will make it possible to spread very fast. The technology, a lot of engineering has gone into making it simple. I don't know, it's human nature that we always like to take everything very complex. That's why in our Indian language you have a proverb that a person never holds it here like this, we like to hold it like this. Because there is some effort and engineering to it. I think a technology can be simple. And just to expand on what he said earlier, I think the problem in our developing countries is that we have been colonized by the Western countries. India was ruled for 200 years by Britishers. And they have built up an education system where they make you learn, read and write. They wanted people who could read and write, not think. And that's why we have stopped believing in ourselves. I think if we start believing in ourselves, in the wisdom, the knowledge which we had, I think we can revive the old culture. It's India, Korea, China. They are countries or continents which have survived for millions of years or hundreds of thousands of years. Why do we require Western technology? Why can't we start looking at solutions ourselves?
And I can add to the question about scaling, because I think it's so important. I think that the social entrepreneur needs to tackle large social problems, and therefore will, in our case with amputees, having 20 million amputees helps us from a scaling perspective, just because we know that the need is very large and that there is a demand. So this is one criteria that has to be in place, I think, in order to achieve significant scale in a short amount of time. Second piece is the sustainability of our organization. Our philosophy at Remotion is to not depend on a traditional charity-supported model. We have a product that there is a huge demand in the world for, and our model now is what we call cost plus. We charge above our manufacturing cost. This revenue is what we feed back into our organization to keep us going, keep us creating more innovations. It's still too early to know if we can sustain ourselves on this, but this is already a step beyond the traditional, and I think it's important that we experiment with a more market-based approach to social entrepreneurship.
I would just like to elaborate. As an entrepreneur, the problem what we are facing, which I'm sure you will face, is copycats. We do a lot of research and development work, we do a lot of innovations, we invest a lot of money into developing a product. And just because we are social entrepreneurs, we don't patent it. Because the idea is we want it to be for the larger good. But in that process, some people come up with products which are not as good, try to sell it cheaper, and create bad name for the technology. So now that we have done some models, wrong people are getting in to make money out of it. And because we are very idealistic, we are leaving that field free for them. So I think we need to sort of also become a bit more business-like, have business models, and also look into financial modeling, where we say there should be a bottom line, and a part of the profit can flow back to the project, and part of it to people who are working on it, so that they are motivated to continue working. So it's a learning phase. We don't know. There is no fixed answer.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Question to Mr. Correct. I understand that you generate revenue from the gas that's sold, and through cylinders or through gas pipes that's being supplied to these villages. But who makes the capital investment, and how long is your payback period?
You will be surprised to know that in this biogas project, the revenue comes not from the sale of biogas, but the revenue comes from the sale of organic fertilizer. But yes, the model what we are now trying to follow in India is what we call the boot model, that we go and invest with a very clear declaration that we will come in with a intention to make IRR, that is internal rate of return or profit of 25%. So there is very transparent mechanism where we go and install the plant, all the costs are known to the people, and we keep on selling the fertilizer and the gas till we receive 25% return, and then we hand over the plant to the village community so that they can create employment and continue to plow back the money into the local economy. So the payback is normally about 4 to 5 years.
And where does this money come from? Like, who
Yeah.
invests?
Yeah, basically, we are tapping into government subsidy, which is available in India. We are looking into social NGOs which are supporting such projects because they were anyway in villages wanting to eradicate poverty or create employment. So we are piggybacking onto that existing structure. For us, it was very important. It is not technology, but it is social engineering which was needed. How do we identify groups? How do we organize them? How do we create that trust? So it was very important that we have a local partner who sort of carries you through the whole process of working with people.
But with the subsidy program, is there an expectation of return? Like you mentioned IRR, so if government is giving subsidy, then they have expectation of return?
Yes, if the subsidy is there, then we can hand over the plant to the people in as much as 1.5 years. And if there is no subsidy, and we try to avoid subsidy because wherever there is subsidy, there is corruption, there is bureaucracy, there is paperwork, there are delays, there is tendering. But sometimes it's a necessary devil. We need to sort of take government's grant or subsidy so that we can spread out a bit more. And I think I did not answer. The key is going to be technology transfer. Our company cannot supply plant in 500,000 villages. We have to have a model where we are transferring the technology to many, many entrepreneurs who will do the same what we are doing. They can pay us a part of royalty so that we continue the development work, R&D work on new applications.
감사합니다. 혹시 질문하실 분이 계시면 마이크를 꼭 사용해 주십시오. Please use mic if you have any question.
I want to ask Joel about. I heard you that you're saying you fixed a wheelchair when you were very young in a university. That reminded me of Jim Carrey's foundation, Better Us. I think you might know. They use the plastic chair and with the very cheap price, they offer poor people the plastic wheelchair. I was wondering if you, what's your next step? What's your next product? It could be a wheelchair, it could be something else with your engineering skills. Thank you.
So that's a very good question about what is the next step. I think we are still getting our first project to succeed. So it's a little bit early for us to know exactly what the next product is before we have scaled our Jaipur knee, the knee joint. Our goal is to get to 100,000 amputees within 5 years. I can maybe guess at some of what the next products would be, but I think they will be related to mobility and amputees or related rehabilitation and assisted technology. I think that for an organization, it only makes sense with the skills that are in our team to keep using what we do well. And in our case, we have a very strong engineering team that has a lot of knowledge working with disabled. And so that's currently our strength, and that's what we will be planning to focus on.
네, 여기 보죠. 네, 방금 쏟으신 분 질문하십시오.
Thanks for the great presentation. I want to ask Mr. Sedler. For example, in Korea, the artificial tooth is classified as medical device. That means the company want to produce the medical device receive the approval from the kind of FDA. So I want to ask, how did you solve this kind of problem? And the second question is your technology open source or protected by patent? If protected by patent, what's the strategies and what's the purpose? Thank you.
So two very good questions. First, you mentioned the copycat problem earlier. The original Jaiprani design is actually open source. It is in public domain. It is not under IP protection. If you want my honest story of how that happened, I think we're a bit naive when we started because we want to change the world and we want to make technology available to everyone. And of course, it sounds fantastic if you design something that's cheap and affordable and can help many people to make it open source. I think it's still to be determined if what the best business strategy is. But we do have an improved knee joint, which is a different version, which we will file intellectual property on, so that we have some clear ownership, and we realize this is a medical device, and that comes with responsibility to ensure that the device is going to be safe. In the case of copycats, if somebody copies our knee joint and does a poor job, somebody could fall and be seriously injured. So I think the question of do I file intellectual property and what is the strategy is very dependent on your organization and what you're doing and where you're working. In our case, as a medical device, it is important to have some level of protection because it makes the patient more safe. It makes our organization more sustainable and gives a clear message that we care about the business element. And this was something we had to learn early on. And the first question you mentioned about regulatory approval, this is a medical device, but it's not invasive, and so actually the regulatory approvals are quite minimal on prosthetics. We've done a number of tests with very high rigor, 3 million cycles on the fatigue testing machine, and also 2 years of field testing. This is what we have been focusing on the last 2 years, is testing every possible way that we could fail the knee joint, because the safety is number one. So we're taking those into account, but there actually is not as many like FDA approval for prosthetics. It's a very special case because it's not surgical or invasive.
Thank you. 한 분만 더 질문을 받겠습니다. Okay.
Thank you. We've had experience in Cambodia with biomass gasification, and hence very interested to know whether or not you can compress producer gas as well as methane gas. That's the first question. The second is this question about copycats. People react to it differently. Sometimes people even think that the copycats are a sign of innovation and an initiative on the part of local people. There's two problems with it. One is that it undercuts any kind of solid business plan or business development of the innovating group. And secondly, there are no standards and safety. And whether it's a knee joint or whether it's gas, and if you're going to pipe gas into houses, you'll get copycats using PVC pipe and sellotape with a toxic matter. And so there is a real need for some kind of standards. It isn't to limit competition, but I wonder if you have any thoughts on how, because this is in Asia, there is no such thing as proprietary rights. We can kid ourselves about patents, etc. So it's a question of, well, how do we deal with that issue?
To your first question, whether it is possible to compress a good gasifier gas, which is a producer gas, which is a mixture of carbon monoxide and hydrogen. Yes, it is possible. One has to only look how much energy does one require. It's just a question of putting enough pressure till you get gasify and compress the gas. We are able to compress the gas, but the problem was like in a 25-liter cylinder, you can put 14.2 kilograms of LPG, whereas to put 9 kilograms, you require 75 liters cylinder. So maybe for your producer gas, you require a larger cylinder, and you may come to a point where it will not become viable. But technologies are changing, so I'm sure that in the near future you will see that it's possible to do operation of natural gas, let's say wood gas too. As to the risk, is how do we not stop innovation? Because I agree that any technology, if someone, for me, a copy is the best form of flattery. That is, I was so good that someone is taking a leaf from me and learning from me. So I'm not anyone learning from us. But yes, what we try to do is that if someone is copying our system, we go to him and make him our alliance partner. We tell him, look, to achieve what we have achieved, you will take another 2 years, you may make mistakes, it will be very expensive mistake. Why don't you become a partner? We give you the know-how, you don't make mistakes, and for that you pay us some part of your profit so that you can continue to be a development organization. Most of the time we have succeeded in cutting out the competition by making them our partners, because ultimately once they realize that they are not interested in monopolizing but leaving the market free for more people to come, it's working. But I don't know how long it will work, because sooner or later the market will be overcrowded and maybe it will not work. At that time we will have to find some solution there.
So a few points on the copycat, because it's, I don't know if I should say it's publicly, but there is at least one copy of the Jeopardy that we've seen in India already. I think maybe 9 months after we have one. I have one with me. I agree this is a great form of flattery. I encourage anyone who has the ability to absolutely go ahead and copy away. Where I draw the line is if somebody is going to be put in danger, then that's where we have to step in and put some barriers. Like I mentioned, this is a medical device, and I do think we have a responsibility to put up some barriers. The way that we designed the Jeopardy was actually to be locally manufactured, to be simple enough for anybody to pick up a drawing and actually copy it with no training. So in essence, we designed the perfect knee joint to be copied and pirated. And I think one of our strategies is that if it's going to take place, to make it take place on our terms, if there are specific materials that we think it needs to be made out of with specific properties, we'll actually share that information openly if we think that it makes sense. So I think there's a balance that we are learning to play now between giving enough information publicly, but also holding back some information when we think that it would be better for us to do the manufacturing, for example. But these are still questions to be answered as we continue. And in general, I am happy to see copycats because it's showing at least that there is a need and people are taking up their initiative. And I say we even got a very good idea from the copy that we saw. I maybe shouldn't call it a copy because it was simply somebody taking our design as an inspiration, and they actually made a children's version of the knee joint. And so this is technically not a copy, it's a new device, and we take this as a very strong indication that the market wants prosthetic knee joints for children that are smaller than the device that I showed. So we actually learned from someone copying from our innovation, and I think this is all part of learning.
Thank you.
Sorry, I would just like to add one very important thing. I think as much as we don't like to sort of monopolize or get an IP right, I think we will be forced to as a social entrepreneur, because if you do not patent it, someone else will patent it and may stop you from producing your own product. It's like already happening in many spices. Like India has been using curry powder for medicinal value for ages. Some American company has gone and patented it, and now we are not allowed, or we were not allowed to use our own products. So I think we need to create an IP right to protect ourselves, and then maybe give it as a license at any cost possible.
Thank you. 너무나 열정적으로 강의해 주시고 답변해 주신 두 분께 뜨거운 박수 부탁드립니다.